Mike Tyson, the former world heavyweight champion, was driving along a deserted road leading through a small provincial town. The sun was already setting, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and pink. It had been a long time since he'd been in a place like this, quiet, cozy, where time seemed to pass more slowly. His black SUV glided smoothly on the asphalt, leaving behind a slight engine noise that blended with the song of cicadas. Tyson was dressed simply in a dark hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. Nothing gave him away as a boxing legend, a man whose name is known all over the world. He was enjoying the moment, a rare opportunity to be alone, away from the noise of big cities and annoying fans. His mind was preoccupied with the upcoming meeting. He was on his way to visit an old friend he hadn't seen in years. Their paths diverged, but the bond that once held them together remained. Tyson was looking forward to this meeting, but first decided to stop at a local diner for a bite to eat. He hadn't eaten home-cooked food in a long time, and the smell of roast meat and fresh bread wafting from the open doors of the establishment beckoned to him. As he parked and got out of the car, a group of bikers gathered at the entrance caught his attention. Their motorcycles, gleaming chrome, were lined up like steel horses ready for battle. The bikers were laughing, talking loudly, and drinking beer, clearly enjoying the evening. Their appearance, leather jackets, bandanas, and tattoos spoke of gang membership. Tyson immediately sensed the tension in the air, but decided to ignore it. He was used to the fact that his presence caused different reactions, and today he didn't want any problems. However, the bikers noticed him. Their gazes, filled with contempt and aggression, were directed at the tall, powerfully built man who didn't seem to be afraid of them. One of them, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a beard and a scar on his cheek, made a mocking comment in his direction. "Does he think he owns this place?" His words made the others laugh. Tyson ignored the provocations and headed for the entrance of the diner. He knew that such people were looking for a reason for conflict, and he didn't want to give it to them. But the bikers, sensing his restraint, decided that he was afraid. They didn't know that this was a man who had fought hundreds of fights in the ring and repeatedly proved that his strength and speed were second to none. "Hey, you!" another biker shouted, getting up from his seat. "Do you even know where you're going?" Tyson stopped, turned slowly, and looked at them. His gaze was calm, but there was a hint of readiness in it. He didn't say a word, but his silence spoke for itself. The bikers, sensing the challenge, began to approach. They were confident of their superiority, unaware of what was waiting for them. "Come on, show me what you can do," the gang leader, Griff, said provocatively, stepping forward. Tyson knew there was no avoiding conflict. He took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline start to fill his body. He didn't want to fight, but he knew that sometimes the only way to stop aggression was to fight back. "Is that really what you want?" "What is it?" he asked, his voice low but full of menace. The bikers laughed, not knowing who they were dealing with. They were confident that their numbers and weapons would give them an advantage, but they were wrong. Tyson was ready for the fight, and his experience spoke for itself. The diner's parking lot was typical of a small town: a few cars, a couple of trucks, and, of course, motorcycles. There were about a dozen of them, large and shiny, with chrome details that glittered in the setting sun. Each bike was like a reflection of its owner, powerful, rough, and a little intimidating. The bikers gathered around the entrance tables acted as if this was their territory and no one dared to trespass on it. In the center of the group, one person stood out: Griff. He was tall, with broad shoulders and muscular arms covered in tattoos. His face, framed by a thick beard, was riddled with scars that told stories he preferred not to talk about. Griff was the leader of the gang, and it was obvious from the way the others looked at him, as if they were waiting for his approval or order. He was leaning back in his chair, a bottle of beer in his hand, and his eyes were cold and appraising, following everything that was happening around him. "Hey, Griff," said one of the bikers, a short man with the nickname Rat. "Have you seen this guy? He just arrived in a black SUV. Thinks he's cool around here, doesn't he?" Griff turned his head slowly, his gaze moving around the parking lot until it came to rest on Tyson's figure. He narrowed his eyes, as if trying to make out something about the man who had gotten out of the car so calmly and walked toward the diner. "Who is he?" Griff asked, his voice low and hoarse, as if he smoked a lot. "I don't know," said the rat, "but he looks like he thinks he's in charge." Griff chuckled. He liked it when someone tried to challenge his authority. It gave him an excuse to show who was boss. He took another sip of beer, then set the bottle down on the table and stood up. His movement was slow and sure, like a predator that knows its prey is already trapped. "Let's see what kind of fruit it is," Griff said, and his words were echoed by laughter and cheers from the others. As if on cue, the gang began to follow their leader. They walked slowly, but with a clear purpose. Their eyes were focused on Tyson, who was already approaching the entrance of the diner. They didn't know who he was, which made them even more confident. To them, he was just another outsider who had accidentally wandered into their territory. Griff shouted as they approached, "Do you know where you're going?" Tyson stopped and turned slowly. His face was calm, but there was a hint of readiness in his eyes. He didn't say a word, just looked at Griff and his gang, assessing the situation. "I just want to eat," he finally said, his voice low but firm. "Eat? You think this is a restaurant for people like you?" His words made the others laugh. They began to surround Tyson like a pack of wolves ready to attack. But Tyson didn't move. He stood like a rock, his body relaxed but ready for action at any moment. "I don't want any trouble," he said, his voice calm but threatening. "Problems?" Griff laughed. "You've already created them just by showing up here." He took a step forward, his face only inches from Tyson's. The smell of alcohol and sweat came from him, mingling with the smell of oil and gasoline from motorcycles. "You think you're cool around here?" Griff hissed. "Show me what you can do." Tyson was silent. He knew that words were useless here. These people were looking for a reason to fight, and he wasn't going to give them one. But if they start, he'll be ready. "Well, don't you say anything?" Griff continued. His words were the last straw. Tyson took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline start to fill his body. He knew what was coming, and he was prepared for it. "Do you really want to do this?" "What is it?" he asked, his voice low but full of menace. Griff laughed, but it was short and nervous. He hadn't expected such a reaction, but he was the leader, and he couldn't back down. "Come on, show me what you can do," he said, taking a step back and gesturing Tyson into action. The gang froze, waiting to see what would happen next. They were confident that their leader could handle this outsider, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. Mike Tyson stood in front of the diner, feeling the tension in the air grow stronger by the second. His gaze skimmed over the faces of the bikers who surrounded him like a pack of hungry wolves. He knew that something serious was about to happen, but his face remained calm, almost unperturbed. On the inside, he was ready for battle, but on the outside, he didn't show it. Griff, the gang leader, stood right in front of him, his eyes glittering with malice and defiance. He was confident in himself, in his strength, and in the support of his men. But Tyson could see something more in his eyes, fear. Fear of the unknown, of a person who wasn't afraid of him. "Well, don't you say anything?" Griff said again, his voice loud but with a hint of uncertainty. "Or are you just a coward?" Tyson didn't answer. He knew that words were useless here. He just stood there, his body relaxed but ready for action at any moment. His eyes, cold and appraising, followed Griff and his gang's every move. "Okay," Griff said, annoyed by Tyson's silence. "If you don't want to talk, then we'll start on our own." He took a step forward, his fist clenched, ready to strike. But before he could do anything, Tyson moved. His reaction was lightning fast. He dodged Griff's punch, then delivered a quick and precise punch to the stomach. Griff doubled over in pain, his breath caught in his throat. The gang froze for a moment, shocked by what had happened. They didn't expect that this person who seemed so calm could be so fast and strong, but their shock didn't last long. "Go ahead," one of the bikers shouted, and they charged at Tyson. Tyson knew he was going to have to fight. He didn't want to, but he had no choice. His body moved with a grace and strength that could only be obtained after years of training. He dodged punches, parried attacks, and threw his own, each one precise and powerful. The first biker who ran up to him was hit in the jaw and fell to the ground unconscious. The second man tried to grab Tyson from behind, but Tyson quickly spun around and elbowed him in the face. The third man, armed with a chain, swung, but Tyson managed to dodge and hit him in the solar plexus. The gang that had been so confident of their superiority was now in disarray. They didn't expect that one person could be so strong, but they didn't give up. They continued to attack, their rage and anger only growing by the second. Griff, who was still holding his stomach, struggled to his feet. His face was contorted with pain and anger. He couldn't believe that this man, this outsider, could take him down so easily. "You will pay for this," he hissed, his voice filled with hatred. Tyson didn't answer. He just stood there, his breathing steady, his eyes following Griff's every move. He knew the man wouldn't give up, and he was prepared for it. Griff drew his knife, the blade glinting in the setting sun. He took a step forward, his eyes full of determination. "Come on, show me what you can do," he said, his voice low but full of menace. Tyson knew this fight would be different. He couldn't just dodge and throw punches. He needed to be careful not to get seriously injured. But he also knew that he couldn't let this man win. Griff lunged at him, knife in hand. Tyson dodged the first punch, then the second. He was waiting for the right moment, and when Griff swung a third time, he grabbed his arm and slapped him hard across the face. Griff fell to the ground, the knife slipping from his hand. Tyson was standing over him, his breathing a little fast, but he was calm. He knew this fight was over. "You lost," he said, his voice low but full of confidence. Griff didn't answer. He just lay on the ground, his body broken, his spirit broken. The gang, seeing that their leader was defeated, began to retreat. They didn't want to fight anymore. They saw that this man, this outsider, was stronger than all of them. Tyson looked at them, his eyes cold and appraising. "Go away," he said, his voice low but full of menace, "and don't come back." The gang didn't wait for a second invitation. They quickly got on their motorcycles and drove away, leaving their leader lying on the ground. Tyson looked at Griff, who was still lying on the ground. He knew that this person wouldn't be a problem anymore. "You've learned your lesson," he said, his voice low but full of confidence. "I hope you remember it." Griff didn't answer. He just lay on the ground, his eyes closed, his body broken. Tyson turned and walked back to his car. He knew that this day would be remembered for a long time, but he also knew that he had done what he had to do.